Excellent. Well, good morning or good afternoon. I guess it's good morning for us. We are in Denver, Colorado at Mountain Connect for a Broadband Breakfast Live Online on the scene at this conference. Mountain Connect is celebrating its 10th year. And there was a little interesting celebration or retrospective yesterday morning, which was quite interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've been here most of those years, and we've been doing a lot of reporting yesterday and today and the next day, although the conference ends today. You'll see a lot more reporting on Broadband Breakfast, so continue to visit and go back there. I'm a little bit less or a little bit more ill at ease because all of my stuff is over there, my screens and my camera. So I'm actually going to basically just pass it on to, I will say their names and give a huge shout out to each of our three guests. But our topic for today at Broadband Breakfast Live Online, and just so you know, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, we are a news and events company. We focus on better broadband, better lives. And so we do reporting and we do our own events in Washington and online, such as this one every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern time. And we try to bring this community together, not just the builders of the pipes and the towers and the routers and all that equipment and gear, but the people who apply it to people's lives, so that we do indeed have people who have the capabilities, the technologies, the access to better broadband to improve their lives. So that's our motto and our mantra. And we've been doing this live online for 4.5 years now, and we try to get a good mix of guests every week. And our topic for today is just to talk about the Mountain Connect conference that's been going on for almost 2 days now and ends at the end of the day. So I'll start with Chris. Chris Bailey is at Wesco. Wesco is one of the sponsors of Broadband Breakfast. Yes. Thank you for that support, Chris. And then next to Chris, we have Jenny Miller, and Jenny is with Education Superhighway, but I'll let you tell a little bit more about each of your roles just now. And then Alan Meyer, I just met on Monday night, and I said, "Hey, you'd be a great guest." And turns out you actually are like a showbiz guy.
Dabble.
So Alan, you can tell us more about that, but also what Corridor Network does. So let's start with you, Chris. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about Wesco, what brings you to Mountain Connect, and then we'll come back to your observations about it.
Sure. So Chris Bailey, Director of Sales for Wesco. We are a supply chain partnership, so we're a full line distributor from power to communications to wireless, integrating with the supply chain to help ease inventory issues, lead time issues and like that for these large builds projects that have been going on and will continue to go on down the road with BEAD. So welcome to be here, and thank you very much, Drew.
Well, and we definitely want to get into some of these issues, because Chris, I run into you at a lot of conferences.
Yes.
And I know that you're out there kind of sharing your message, but as you know, I mean, the message differs slightly as you go from place to place.
It does, yes.
I want to hear what your message is here. But Jenny, it was nice to meet you. Obviously, we've known and are friends with Education Superhighway. We've had folks from Education Superhighway on our program, but this is first time for you with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Hey, Jenny. Great chat with you Monday night. Thanks for the podcast invitation. So yeah, Education Superhighway is a philanthropically funded nonprofit, and we focus on the affordability gap. So that's a subset of the digital divide, where it's folks who aren't online, not because they don't have access to the internet, but just because they can't afford it. Turns out that a really good way to make a big dent in the affordability gap is to focus on multifamily housing, or MDUs. Statistically, about 20 to 25% of the whole digital divide lives in affordable multifamily housing. So we started in rural schools, hence the Education Superhighway. As the pandemic hit, everything went home, you remember. So if you didn't have internet at home, you were doing homework in a McDonald's parking lot. So at that point, we pivoted, and now we focus on MDUs.
Well, and we've done a full hour-long Ask Me Anything with Evan Marwell, and he gave a little bit of that story of you're in your second life, basically.
We're in our second life. We're back for more.
Back for more. Great. Well, thanks for being with us, Jenny. Now, Alan, tell us a little about yourself and Corridor.
So Alan Meyer, I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Business Development for Corridor Network Construction. We're based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but we've done projects nationwide, and we are a construction resource for the fiber industry. Everything from tower climbers and aerial placement of fiber to digging or plowing on the ground and placing fiber, conduit and fiber and splicing, everything that has to do with the construction aspect of the projects.
Well, it's probably only fair for me to just give a little bit about my connection to Denver and this conference. And I was born here in the city, so this is home for me. I haven't lived here for decades and decades, but I do feel a little bit of homecoming when I've come here. And then over the last 10 years, that the 10 or more years that the conference has been going on, I actually used to travel east to get to this conference because I was in Utah for many years, and many people from Utah would come to this conference, and obviously the whole Mountain West region. Now I'm in Washington, where Broadband Breakfast is based, so I come west to this conference. But Jeff Gavlinski, the director, CEO of Mountain Connect, has just done an incredible job with this conference. In his remarks yesterday, he spoke about how it's the last remaining conference of this size or greater that is independent, meaning it's not either owned by a trade association or by a large conglomerate that does a lot of trade shows. And that's true, and that's a kind of a refreshing observation about Mountain Connect. And so that leads to maybe my first question, which is, what messages have you been bringing, or what message have you been hearing from your time here at Mountain Connect? And let's just go down the line with starting with you, Chris.
We talked about it earlier, right? 29 years in this business, and you see different messaging. And I will say Mountain Connect, Jeff, had done a great job this year. The amount of state broadband directors that are here,
there's more than 30 state broadband directors here, and they've been multiple panels on
multiple panels. You had the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southeast, the Southwest, and the message there was, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what the process is. And I think when they get out and they start talking about that, and you start talking about the people that want to apply for that BEAD funding, what's going to intake and what's going to involve, that's a better understanding. Number one, for all of us that are here, but even for us outside of that are not here. And you bring up a good point, Jeff. This is the last one that's not associated with a 3 or 4 letter acronym behind it, right? So, no, this is a great conference. I've been coming now 6 years, minus obviously what happened during the pandemic. But, seeing some of the panels, we got to talk about labor, workforce, right? That's a big hot topic. And to your point, Jenny, MDU, right? That was one that I think it was on your panel yesterday. And we were talking about MDUs because that's going to be difficult to wire. Do we look at managed Wi-Fi? Because we don't know that infrastructure. We don't know what's behind the walls and those kind of things. So there's been a lot of different messages here that I think is going to be beneficial, number one, for the people that are here and moving forward for us on this panel and everyone else. So.
Great. Jenny, what is your observation about kind of this conference? I mean, and how do you compare it with others that Education Superhighway is at?
Yeah, so I think this is I was trying to figure out either my 4th or 5th Mountain Connect. Definitely up when it was up in the mountains. So this is now the 2nd time. I want to echo thanks for Jeff and his sidekick Doug Adams. They do an awesome job. I mean, I know the logistics of this thing.
Yeah.
So great job.
Yeah.
Great job to those guys. Gosh, I mean, it's so BEAD focused. But also I think I'm hearing I didn't realize when you were in my panel that we were going to be on a panel today, so that's actually funny. But I'm hearing a lot about cost increases. So I was on a panel yesterday about the broadband labor shortage. And Chris had some good comments in there. There were a lot of industry folks in there. So costs going up, BEAD, obviously you have finite costs, you have finite budget to connect a lot of folks with. And then kind of the flip side of that is just the affordability aspect, especially given that ACP just went away. ACP was the most successful affordability program we've had in our nation's history. With 23 million Americans online. Then Benton recently estimated that about 3 million families were kicked off after ACP going away. So it's kind of bad timing, so kind of, everybody's concerned about just rising labor costs, material costs, so that those costs are going to be passed on to consumers, and kind of underscores the need for some sort of permanent broadband benefit for consumers.
Right. And obviously another issue that's tied into this is the Universal Service Fund and reforms for that. And a lot of people who've been advocating for renewing the Affordable Connectivity Program really didn't want to tackle that topic I'm not saying that was the wrong approach, but the reality is that Congress does not do anything with unless it's under extreme duress.
Yeah.
Extreme, underline that word. So, Alan, let's hear a little bit about you and what messages you're taking from and giving here at this conference.
So first of all, big shout out to Jeff Gavlinski, Doug Adams, and I think this is my 8th time at
A
Mount
veteran.
Connect. I remember when it was just a small handful of
Right.
sponsors and exhibitors and the high top tables, and it was really just a good little, like almost like an extended happy hour. That's what I remember from the original Mountain Connects, and to see how it's evolved. The name is Mountain Connect, but it is way beyond that. And I talk to a lot of people when I'm recommending the conference, because I go to a lot of conferences, and when they've never been here before, they think it is a regional Rocky Mountain conference, and it absolutely is not anymore.
Right.
And again, kudos to Jeff for how he's broadened the scope of this conference.
So I want to raise an issue I've been hearing a lot about here at the conference, which is technology and the choice of technology. And it might have always been there, but we've sort of swept it under the rug, right? And this is a fiber forward program with BEAD, right? And that is, explicitly in the rules and regulations of the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program that, in general, fiber is preferred, but there's been questions about, well, how much wireless will state broadband offices be awarding? Yesterday was a keynote address by Gwen Shotwell, the president and COO of Starlink, and she basically outlined the case for why Starlink should be, or other LEOs, low Earth orbit satellite internet services, should be receiving funds under BEAD if various hurdles can be sorted through. So let's just tackle it. We'll just keep going in this order. We don't need to always run down the line, but
Feel
Chris,
free to jump in anytime, right?
what are your thoughts on the fiber wireless satellite continuum? Is that the right way to think about it?
I think it is. I mean, you're going to have fiber, right? Fiber is going to be that backbone, that grease, the oil to the engine, that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a data collection. Fiber is going to be that. So when you think about that, then you're going to have wireless that's going to be on those far end devices to collect that data to come back. Because think about this, when you're transmitting by wireless, so you have terabits of data that are going across that network. You're going to have packets that are going to fall out, right? So you need those kind of that mechanism. But then let's look here. You're in Denver, right? You're not going to be able to put fiber in the rocks.
Right.
I mean, without extravagant cost of dynamite blowing up that mountain and trying to put fiber in there. So there is going to be a play for that. And some of the panels I sat in yesterday on some of the states, they're open to wireless. I mean, I sat in the one for the Midwest, and the state director of broadband for Michigan said, hey, we will accept wireless because we can't go across a waterway, right, with fiber. We're going to have to shoot that, wirelessly to get a point to point or point to multiple point.
Right. In fact, we did a webinar together
Yes.
about sort of fiber and wireless and why it's important to kind of think about those together.
Sure.
I mean, and I'm by laying this out in terms of fiber, wireless, and satellite, I'm not saying that these technologies are in competition all the time with each other, right? And in fact, that's really sort of a trend over the last 5 or more years that all networks are hybrid in some extent.
Some extent, yeah. I mean, and there's, to your point, like you said, there's always been this like push-pull between fiber and wireless, and it's really a perfect marriage to get to some of those areas. Because we talked yesterday during your session, right? You're going to have some sort of Wi-Fi in some of these older NDU units because, you either got RF cables in there, or you've got Cat3 cables that are going through that were probably wired 50 years ago.
Right.
So how are you going to get to those, each one individual units when you're going up into the plenum or the riser? So it's going to be critical to be able to offer those services, that data bandwidth to those units. So.
And it really does come down to affordability a lot of times too. You've got a finite bucket of money. You got a budget. And like you mentioned, a waterway. We can build fiber underwater. It'll go.
Yeah.
Is it affordable? Probably not.
So
So
and
that's
when you
where
do that, right? The Army Corps of Engineers got to get it. Now we get into a whole separate permitting, right away, all those other things that could delay the project, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's the same argument with, do you go underground, do you go aerial, or do you go wireless? Actually, a lot of projects call for all three of them. And as we saw yesterday, I see the opportunity, I'm kind of sold a little bit on incorporating instead of just those three, we might have a LEO solution as well.
What was it that sold you on that? What do you think was the most important?
Just the idea, kind of going back to, we run into challenges also. We'll see a bid for a big area and, you know, want our input on how to approach this. And yeah, there's just areas that are, not only would it be unaffordable to tackle that from a terrestrial fiber placement standpoint or an aerial, but it can actually be dangerous. I've seen markets and project areas where it would be kind of dangerous to put my guys out there. And so that's where I think that would be a great solution.
Jenny, how do you at Education Superhighway think about this fiber wireless satellite mix?
I see it's not even a continuum. I see it's more as like a space, right? You know, and there's sort of an appropriate, there's an appropriate place for each technology. So we're completely technology agnostic, right? Like BEAD, we think there's, you know, like the right tool for the right job, right? I think given finite budgets, I think a lot of state broadband offices are sort of, I don't know, I like to think of it, it's like a slider. It's like on one hand, you've got fiber everywhere. And if you have infinite money, that's great. We don't have infinite money. And especially just as the cards fell, some state broadband offices just aren't going to have enough money to even get to say their community anchor institutions. So again, like BEAD level setting, it goes unserved, underserved community anchors. That's the priority, right? So well, I was just going to say, so like basically you can kind of move that slider over, if you will, because wireless is, of course, it's cheaper, it's faster to deploy, you can get it spun up and served, you start serving customers quite quickly, so you gotta find the optimal solution for each state.
Well, I was kind of just wanting to underscore that priority thing, right? In the BEAD notice of funding opportunity, the NOFO, now 3 years, 2 years, 2 years. It came out, you know, it came out at Mountain Connect, but it was a little bit earlier that year. So at that unveiling of the NOFO and then the discussion about it, and we actually had Alan Davidson at Mountain Connect, and we were able to talk through. I had the opportunity to interview him, and we went over a lot of aspects of that NOFO, and that one in particular that you reminded me of. You've got to get unserved first and underserved next, and then community anchor institutions, and for the most part, I think everyone's basically saying we're all going to get underserved as well, aren't we? I mean, do you hear a lot of talk about where we're not going to get the underserved by this funding? Maybe the question in there is, what about those community anchor institutions, right?
Yeah, there definitely are states that won't get to CAIs. I think there are states, what I've heard, that might not get to underserved. And that's not any fault of the broadband office. That's just like some states. I mean, you run fiber. Some states are really expensive to run fiber. They're high cost states. America's a very broad, wide ranging country in geography. We've got all kinds of things.
I think that the point I'm getting at is that when Evan Feynman, who just gave the director of the BEAD program at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, was just on the stage in a keynote with Lori Adams of Nokia, and in that keynote, he was not saying, "Oh, don't worry about the underserved," right? I mean, when they say internet for all, they're saying everyone who is or underserved. That's, I guess, the point I'm underscoring.
Correct. Yeah. So NTIA right now, with the approval, I obviously don't work for NTIA, but with the approval of the initial proposals from all the states. So from what I've heard, they're very big on just like compliance with the NOFO. So the NOFO is the law. It's what outlines BEAD, and like for the initial, the initial proposal volume 1, which had to do with the state's challenge processes, and then the initial proposal volume 2, the SEP grantee selection process. Basically, it's like NOFO compliance. And in the NOFO, it says, first you gotta serve all your unserved, and then your underserved, and then your CAIs in that order.
Well, we want to talk about things besides BEAD, but let's just close out a question. What are each of your thoughts? And we'll go from Alan this way. What are your thoughts about the status of BEAD? Are you good on it? Are you like warm, or are you cold?
That's a great question, Drew, because that's probably been probably the #1 topic that comes up during the social times here at Mountain Connect that I get is, do you think BEAD is in jeopardy with a change of administration, for example? There's a lot of questions. Why don't we have funding yet? And a lot of people, when we don't have specific direct answers, we start making them up in our heads. And so there's a lot of concern that, well, maybe with a change of administration, which there's going to be a change regardless of the party. So is B going to be pulled back?
Well, let's tackle it
Yeah.
because that is a question on people's mind.
It would be a horrible
They said they weren't
decision
going to
to
talk, they said they weren't going to talk about, it, but we can talk
Right.
about it.
Yeah.
So like, if Donald Trump were elected, what do you think would happen to Pete Allen?
I think regardless of who's elected, I think it's the same thing. The economy is kind of taking a hard hit this week. There's been a lot of reports, stock market took a big crash Monday and Tuesday. It's kind of bounced back a little bit. But if I look at it as a layman, I come into office and I go, okay, a lot of experts say we overspent by $1 trillion to come out of COVID. Now we're in a deficit of $1 trillion. Where are we going to find that money? Oh, look, here's 50 billion that we can pull right away out of BEAD. That's my fear. Because
The money has been
historically-
committed. It's not that
Yeah.
easy, right?
Yeah.
It's been committed, but until it's been
Until it's been
until a
spent.
check's been made, there's always an opportunity to pull back.
And by committed, it may be in Treasury's account instead of in a state's account.
Right.
So many state
That's
broadband
exactly
officers say that. I'm
That's
not
my
worried
concern.
about it being pulled as long as it's in our state's bank.
Well, there you go. Yes, absolutely. Then we maintain control.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important for state by state to maintain control of those funds. The states know what needs to be done with their states, not the federal government. That's my personal opinion.
So you don't need to tackle the political one if you don't want to, Jenny. But BEAD, are you like warm, cold, somewhere in between?
You mean on like, do I think it will go away or just how it's going?
No,
or-
no, how is it going?
Yeah.
Is it in a good state right now, or is it not in a good state?
Yeah, and further, I don't think we're in danger of it going away.
Good.
No,
because-
just to be clear, right?
Yeah, because I
There's
mean,
no-
the IIJA is a law, right? That was cited
There's
in
a
the
law,
like, this is-
there's regulations,
Yeah.
things do not disappear.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like, once they've been committed, as the funds have been committed.
Yeah, but how it's going, I can comment pretty micro level actually. So we've actually, the challenge process. Are you
Yes,
familiar with the
once,
challenge
once you
process?
tell
Yeah.
our viewers to maybe.
Sure.
about a
Okay,
little
so the
bit brief.
challenge process. So this is a big part of BEAD. So what constitutes the universe for like who is unserved and underserved? So that's something called the fabric. So the broadband serviceable location fabric. It's basically a big set of data points, and it's all the broadband serviceable locations in the country. Each one of those were self-reported by providers to be either unserved, underserved, or a community anchor institute. Well, they have to say like, is it served and is this a community anchor? So because it's self-reported data, NTIA was big on wanting a robust, high participation challenge process where the public could say, hey, this 123 Main Street in, Topeka, Kansas. They say we have 100 by 20 here, but actually we don't have any internet here. So I'm going to submit a challenge, an availability challenge. That's one of the many types of challenges, and says, hey, we don't have internet here. That process has been, so it's happening now. I believe there are 8 states that haven't gone yet, but most states are done. And it's been a very like labor intensive process, but we've actually participated in every single state's challenge process. So for instance, we focus on MDUs, like I said, but we'll actually, say 123 Main Street is a large MDU. Then we're going to go online, says like, oh, Comcast serves this. So I go like literally me, I go online, like try to order service to 123 Main Street, apartment B and Comcast. And sometimes they're like, cool, here's your plan, pick your plan. But sometimes, and I'm not picking on Comcast, it's all providers. Sometimes they're like, we don't serve this address. So then we would submit a challenge. So, I mean, it's plugging along slowly, I mean, we're in, the second year since IIJA was, well, I guess it was signed in November
We're in the third
2021. We're in the
almost
third
the
year.
fourth
The
year.
second year since the NOFO hit it. But I mean, even just at Mountain Connect, at least 2 or 3 volume 2s were approved.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, 33 of the states, volume 2 of their initial proposal, which is basically, the blueprint for how they're going to serve, have been approved, right? And as you pointed out, Jenny, most have done or started their challenge process, which is a key part
Right.
of getting the next phase that we move to is actually opening up portals for applications, right?
Procurement.
And there are a number of key, and we don't need to go super deep into this, but there are a number of key decisions that states need to make, including the areas in which they're going to put forth their project. Are they
Correct.
going to be larger, like county level? Are they going to be smaller, like census block
Or a school district. Some states are using school
Yeah,
districts.
some are using railroads, some are using
Exactly,
roads, right?
exactly. And some states have
Interstates.
like put out for public comment, I know Nevada and Colorado for sure, and there may be others, I just know those two for sure. Hey, public, comment on our regional project areas.
Yeah.
You know, and they want to get feedback on like, are these the right project areas,
Yeah.
for instance? Because that really matters for a, you know, for a bid.
So from your perspective, Chris, how do you view BEAD? And we should also just say, BEAD is not the only federal broadband program. There's the American Recovery,
CARES.
CARES Act. I mean, CARES was early, but anyway,
Right.
there's a lot of other programs
Yeah.
that BEAD fits in. And one of the points Evan Feynman just made in his keynote this morning was BEAD is kind of like the cleanup after all these other projects designed to make sure internet is available for everyone. But just, you know, from your perspective at Wesco, how do you view the status of BEAD? You know, again, warm, neutral, cold?
I think it's warm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I learned a lot this week by coming out here, by sitting down on your panel, on the broadband panels and other panels that were going on, because now I understand that process a lot deeper, right? And the broadband offices are willing to negotiate and help these possible ISPs, carriers come in and build those underserved areas, right? And that's very encouraging, right? Because that outreach program is very critical, because part of the challenge process is how we're going to build it and how we're going to get to that served area. So I feel very good about it, right? The timeline keeps shifting.
Yeah.
You know, because, we're looking at, I mean, Louisiana could have done it a year ago, right? And then now we're looking at first quarter of 2025, right? Before shovels are hitting the ground. Then, we're looking at possibly 2026. And but I know there's a lot of data that you got to capture. There's a lot of things that the broadband offices have to do.
Yeah.
That I finally realized what the tasks they have in front of them. So I'm very warm with it. So.
Well, let's just turn the page. There are things besides BEAD.
Yes.
Grab bag, Alan, what one or two things besides BEAD that you've kind of heard about or?
Honestly, for us, the greatest activity and the greatest projects, they're self-funded. We're doing a bunch of community projects in the state of Iowa right now, and they're funded by the cities. We've also got several projects throughout the Midwest that are backed by private equity. And those projects, they hum along really, really well.
And I will say, now is the time to build.
Yeah.
I mean, and between good laborers, I mean, Alan, you can speak to that, right?
We got good labor, we just don't have a lot of it.
Right. You have good people, good laborers right now. You have available inventory,
Yep.
right? So, and then, I mean, pricing has maintained a level set now, right? So.
Yeah, I'll say pricing's maintained, but labor costs have increased. So
without
there is a
doubt,
challenge there for us.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, you should be self-funded or private equity, you should build now before B would hit, right? Because you could,
I
not
agree.
saying this, right, knock on wood, that I don't want to go back to where we were during the pandemic, where lead times are 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, they're 26 weeks, and they're continue. So granted, that's where, it helps. Part of the B process is supply chain partnership.
Yeah.
But we could in mid 2025 and we could have 10 or 11, 12 states running right parallel to each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to be prepared for from an industry perspective, for the laborers, for the indie units, for the supply chain, and trying to maintain some sort of organization in the chaos.
Jenny, what's on your mind? And maybe you want to talk about the panel you were on? I didn't have a chance to.
Yeah, so we talked about the broadband labor shortage. I heard an interesting stat from Dave Stalen, the CEO of the TIA,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Saying
yeah.
something like for every application they get for a telecom professional, for every 9 spots, there's 1 application, which is pretty dire sounding.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, so that's.
Yeah, we run into it all the time.
I mean, that's not really our wheelhouse, but like, obviously, what really affects us, I mean, or the families that we advocate for, just like increased labor costs means increased costs, which actually is a good segue to ACP, which is a different, like you said, not everything is BEAD. And ACP going away, I just think
Just define what ACP is.
Sure, yeah, for all the listeners, the Affordable Connectivity Program. So there was Lifeline, but it was a $9.25 subsidy. It wasn't really considered very successful. The ACP was actually a
But it's
successful
still
program.
going on. Lifeline is.
Lifeline, yes,
part of the
Lifeline is still going on. For a lot of reasons, which I don't know how too in the weeds you want to get right now, but for a lot of reasons, the ACP really did a lot better than Lifeline. One easy one is just a lot of cable companies offer like a $10 a month plan.
Mhm.
Lifeline, $9.25 is less than $10. So a a lot of families ended up just using that for their mobile phone plan, which we all know for like digital opportunity and, you know, the education stuff like that, you really need like a device to get in there and like take a class or access your services or whatever. So the ACP going away, it's just really unfortunate timing, that we couldn't get the, you know, congressional will. There is like a breath coming out. So there's the, ACP Extension Act. It just got out of Senate Commerce Committee.
Right.
TBD what's going to happen there,
Right.
but it did escape 14 to 12 along party
Well,
lines.
so the affordable connectivity programs end, while there's still the chance that it could get revived, most people are pessimistic at this point. You would think that this would be a thing that could unite the parties, and in fact, broadband is still remarkably not a partisan issue, right?
Totally, yes.
You know, we spoke earlier about Donald Trump and his candidacy. Well, his vice presidential running mate, JD Vance, is one of the very early, and he's co-sponsor of the ACP, you know, the bill to reinstate the ACP, and just talks quite a bit about it. So I don't know quite how this will get sorted out, but some combination of changes to Universal Service Fund, the fact that election is over whenever it is over, will open up possibilities for a new affordability program. That's at least my view. I don't know.
I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, I mean, I just want to underscore like the bipartisanness of this issue. Everybody needs internet.
Yeah.
Like everybody needs internet.
Yeah.
And I think both parties really believe that. So I do think there is political will to get a permanent broadband benefit for consumers. They need it, especially like the most, you know, subscription vulnerable. TBD how we're going to get there, but we are optimistic that, you know, something can come along.
I mean, that was one thing we learned during the pandemic, right?
Right.
People, to your point earlier, you were driving 20, 30 minutes to a McDonald's, to a library. I mean, there was a couple communities in Ohio that would take an old school bus and they would make a server room there. And people would come up there and, you know, emit Wi-Fi access there so that at least moms and dads can work, kids could do their schoolwork, that kind of stuff. So,
But do you think in this election cycle, people still remember that?
No.
We historically, we have short memories.
yeah,
Things like that.
But
And-
those are the success stories that,
Yeah,
that they need to
yeah.
be putting out there, right? Because people are becoming adaptable to that, right? They wanted to be able to get that because I have to make a livelihood to do this. And yeah, I got to suffer 20 to 30 minutes drive, but now we have that where we can build that to those people when they don't have to work. They got it at the convenience of their home.
What's another issue that you've dived into or learned a little bit about while you're here, Alex?
Well, a lot of the people I've talked to talked about the labor issue.
Yeah.
Just, you know, how, so we are at, this is a Titanic comparison because this is the tip of the iceberg. What we're seeing, the activity, and we're busy. We're doing a lot of construction, and I'm seeing a lot of construction companies just all of a sudden emerge. Every conference I go to, it's like, I didn't know they existed. So, and then I find out where they all came from, and so it's growing. Got a lot more contractors out there, but we don't have as many labor resources. Drill operators, aerial linemen. Aerial linemen, so difficult to find them, and I don't think we're doing a very good job of cultivating new labor resources.
What can be done on that front?
Yeah, I actually, not to try to be like the positive Polly here, but I do.
Oh, please do.
No, there are some. So actually, I mean, no.
You should have said it in your session. You should have said it in your session.
I mean, I try to be positive. I don't know, like.
You were fine. You were
Yeah,
fine.
it's like realistic, but, so on MDUs, I mentioned at the outset, so 20 to 25% of the whole digital divide lives in affordable housing. So it's a great way to reach all the covered populations that are mentioned in the Digital Equity Act. So, you know, folks who speak a different language at home, veterans, rural folks, seniors, there's a whole long list. Some MDU programs that states are cobbling together with either their BEAD money, their digital equity money, leftover ARPA funds, CPF, you name it, they're finding funding. Louisiana is a good example. They're also doing workforce training elements for their folks in MDUs. They're partnering with community colleges to help fill the need for like labor positions, et cetera.
Well, I will say the Fiber Broadband Association, FBA, they have an outreach program. I mean, we're partnering with a couple state broadband offices in Vermont, Maine, and other places.
Yeah.
to, they have a vocational school. Oklahoma State does a good job of that. Penn State does a good job at that. They're doing that outreach. We need to make that connection, right? With those people that come out of that program and then come in to, possibly come to you. I'm sorry, Jen, I didn't mean to reach everybody. Come into you and just say, hey, we got an apprentice here.
Yes.
Because I went to a Bonfire, had something on Monday night, and they have a technical school out here.
Right.
And I can't remember the gentleman's name that was on it, but I mean, he has splicers. He has a guy that runs around from Utah to northern
We do
Colorado.
too.
Yeah, see, but he has a school that he might have 25, 30 kids. And they come from maybe low income, those kind of things. And he runs them to this school, and
that's a great way
just
to
gotta
do
make
it.
that connection to the contractors in that market. So number one, when they come out of there, right, they have some sort of a skill set, then you perfect them to what you need to do.
One of the things we've done in the past is when we've gotten a new project area, say we've got a small community of 5,000-6,000
Yeah.
homes, we always want to get on the front end. A lot of times it's me and get in touch with the Chamber of Commerce, get in touch with the city directors, and let them know, hey, we're coming into town. Here's what we got. You've already issued those permits, but hey, by the way, how can we reach out to your community to let them know we're hiring for laborers?
Yeah, we do the same thing.
So we want to be part of the community.
When we come into a community, right, and we're gonna manage a project for inventory, that issue material to the contractors, we will go and be an advocate to those people and say, hey, do you have a family member? Do you have a friend that needs a job? We'll teach them warehousing, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the start of it, teach them the operating system, teach them how to, get them forklift certified, that kind of stuff. We give them some of the job sets and we keep it local.
Yeah.
Because, you don't.
I love doing that.
I do too. It comes back to the community. So.
Well, I just can wind you up and we just start here. Let's see what we got some questions here. So I'm gonna grab my confidence monitor here, which we're calling it, and see if we've got many questions here. And we do. We've got a number here. So thanks for asking them. Let's see how many we can take here. All right, from Michael Pitch, how can Starlink be a valuable option when the cost is about 4 times of the affordable cost?
That's not the impression we got yesterday.
I didn't get that impression.
Well,
either,
so I'm thinking that this might be coming from the cost that I believe was discussed was $120 a month for Starlink, and then you still have to get the unit.
Well,
right?
yeah, you have to pay. I don't know what that is.
$500
Is that what it is? I don't
That's
even
what
know
I
what it
heard.
is anymore. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's a fair point.
it is. Yeah.
It is. But when you're in rural communities, I've visited farmhouses and farms and ranches that they spend thousands a month because they have to have a customized solution. And a lot of times they're getting 10 megabits per second.
Maybe 25.
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
But agriculture is an area where they're leaning more and more on technology that's internet based.
Well, and understanding agriculture, right? Working farms. You've got plows, you've got combines, you got tractors, and you got to monitor milk production, pig production, those kind of things. So nobody wants wired stuff in there
No.
because now you got the major link cut between Kansas and DC. So
Right.
I will say, just to chime in there quickly, I mean, there are places that you just can't reach without LEO modality. I mean, and we can actually turn this into a digital equity issue. Like there are tribes in the Aleutian Islands that are on Starlink.
Mhm.
And now Amazon's, of course, getting a competitor soon too. So,
exactly.
I think
Project Kuiper,
more
yeah.
options are
Which we
better.
need that.
Right.
The competition is going to lower prices.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee about affordable housing connectivity programs. Are we seeing positive participation from housing owners and local housing authorities across the nation? What are some of the biggest challenges to the affordable housing connectivity program in your experience?
That's that's a great question. So with any housing owner, I mean, like it runs the gamut, right? So I mean, there's no regulation on like who can buy a property. Anybody can be a property owner.
Right.
That being said, I want to call out some managed service providers or MSPs. So for those who don't know, managed service providers differ from a traditional ISP in the sense that their whole business is wiring up an MDU. So they take, basically it's like an instant on solution. They take care of it for the residents, et cetera. So it's a very nice experience for the residents. They don't have to wait for a tech to come install, blah, blah, blah. They don't have to like take off work. It's like maybe if they move a lot, they just move in and it's instant on. So managed service providers specialize in working with property owners to get them to kind of play ball to like mount equipment, get a quick install, get service spun up for their residents, et cetera. So, there is a way. And so generally we are really bullish actually on like how the whole property owner, housing authority, federal program thing is kind of working together. New York is I'll give you two really good examples. New York, they are using $100 million in their capital projects fund for what they call the Affordable Housing Connectivity Program to do exactly this. And they're doing, we're actually helping them with this. They're doing like a lot of outreach to housing authorities and, trying, because outreach is a big thing.
Yeah.
And then in Massachusetts, they have a $22 million retrofit program going on because as we talked about yesterday, public housing, I mean, was it built in 1991? It was probably built in like 1951, right? So a lot of these buildings, if they were like exposed to the elements, they're kind of worn down. So you need to do a lot of retrofitting in order to make them.
Well, you have asbestos in there, right? Or whatever that was.
You have all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean.
So, but there is a lot of energy going toward like MDU retrofits and, getting it so folks in public and affordable housing can have, 100 by 20 or greater, just like, everybody else.
Yeah. Do you, let's keep going. We've got some more good questions here. If you limit affordable housing to Wi-Fi, then those will always be second-class citizens. The real issue here are regulation and competition. So I don't know, let's kind of talk a little bit more about MDUs, affordable housing. I mean, to be clear, these are not the same issues necessarily, right?
Yeah, I would actually push back on that because like we support fiber to the unit retrofit. I mean, we support technology agnosticism. We think states know what's best for the states, cities know what's best for the city. We're not going to tell you how to do it, but there are many ways to connect an MDU and get at least 100 by 20 to every single unit simultaneously. So it's not, I mean, it's always wireless at some point, even fiber to the unit. I mean, you're not walking around with your laptop plugged in, right? So like the wiring has to stop at some point, but, just want to be clear, like when we're talking about MDU solutions, it doesn't have to be like a hallway, access point, and then the units are connected. It could be like a fiber to the unit solution.
Do you have any experience in the MDU space, Alan, or?
We've built into MDUs and such and brought fiber to the building. And like you said, a lot of those solutions are just fiber to the building and there's an access point maybe on the roof or something like that. The equipment nowadays is amazing.
It's great.
It's different than it was 10 years ago and light speed different than 20 years ago. And they can blast through and get great speeds just from one access point in a building.
I mean, a lot of people, what they do is like there's this clear fiber, right, that they can put around the crown molding. They can, do, they can do those kind of things. But if you want a true fiber to the unit, to the wall plate that's coming into the house, because as you said, Jen, it's going to be Wi-Fi after that, right? You're going to be into that network, but there is manufacturers out there that they have a clear single fiber. They come into an access point, like at the door frame or whatever, and they take this little like roller track. Yeah, you've seen it. Yeah, I mean, and it's your option. You want fiber to that because you don't know what's behind those walls. So you're going to have to go on the external of the walls to do that. Now, if the sun hits it light, your cat may mess around with it or something, but okay, right?
Yeah. We have another question here about the FCC and pole attachments. Is the FCC offer to mediate pole attachment replacement costs improving the situation? I think just meaning the rollout of broadband. Do any of you have
interesting
thoughts or experience on pole attachment issues?
It's interesting. 15 years ago, aerial deployment was probably number one. Let's go aerial. I was involved heavily with the Google fiber deployments across the country, and they very much wanted to go aerial because there was a cost and it was kind of a speed to deployment, all those things. I myself personally made some phone calls to utility sources and cities in the East, and I was doing it on behalf of an engineering company. I was asked, who's the customer? I said, that's anonymous right now. It's us. No, we will not give you our pole costs, our permitting process, none of it until we know who it is. Because they knew it was Google. And if they know it's Google, all of a sudden, you never want to feel sorry for a multi-billion-dollar company. I felt sorry for them. Every time their name was mentioned, all of a sudden pole replacement costs doubled, permitting price doubled, the process doubled. It's crazy. And now today, as a result of all that, we can deploy in a lot of cases, in most cases, I would say, we can deploy fiber underground in conduit faster than you can put it on a pole. And we can do it cheaper and there's no residual pole costs.
Mhm.
So, and the valuation from a private equity perspective, the valuation of conduit and fiber underground is multiples higher than fiber that's on a pole.
Pole attachments?
I mean, I was, you hit the nail on the head there, right? So I can't interject much more than
All
that.
right.
You live in
No-
real
no
world,
problem.
right? I mean, I know I'm trying to make adjustments on my side because if you can't get the pole attachment, to your point, you're gonna go underground.
I'm
So
here
now you're
9
gonna-
months for some pole
Yeah,
permits.
yeah. So I'm gonna try to make adjustments in that system to make sure that you have either conduit, direct buried, pedestals, vaults, closures, those kind of things, versus aerial versus underground, those kind of
And
things.
going back to our previous conversation, talking about budgets and things like
Yeah.
that, that's a really tough moving target.
It is.
For budgetary perspective, because you can look at a market and say, let's go aerial and let's do that. But then when you add the 9 months that you won't get revenue.
Yeah.
That revenue has to factor in, or the lack thereof has to factor into the budget as well.
Yeah, and that's the critical piece, right? You've got to put that buffer in there. It could come before your 9 months or it could come after, right? So you got to factor that in. So,
Here's a great question from Sean Dundon. He says, GAO issued a report opining on past broadband grants and effectiveness, and the major finding there was a lack of technical assistance and implementation, and that while capital expenditures are great, no support or subsidy exists for ongoing operating expenses, specifically for small networks. So the question is, how can we avoid the mistake of past grant programs and keep BEAD funding networks sustainable? Thoughts on that?
My first thought is, what a smart guy that Sean Dundon must
Yeah.
be. Wow.
that's some serious research on that, right?
Yeah, I think I've heard of him. Yeah, I think he's very well respected. Yeah, there's always opportunities for improvement on all of these things. It's interesting when I'm talking socially again with people, we've got all the answers. And yet the projects or the programs rather are being done by people that don't get to these conferences and meet us and before they make the legislation. So yeah, they tend to miss a lot of things that the real world has to deal with.
Any thoughts on the capital and operating expenses and how we kind of make programs sustainable if there's money now for capital? How is operating going to be covered?
Yeah, it's always a moving target, right? I mean, you got to factor that in the whole scheme of things, because you got that discretionary and then undiscretionary cost that could impact that. And it's not as easy as a general ledger move every month. You got to factor those in, and that's a critical piece, and be able to have that happy balance there between CapEx and OpEx. Absolutely.
I gave a presentation to the Indiana Broadband Association a year and a half ago, and they had asked me to speak on the.
Wait, you're from Indiana?
No.
Yeah.
Two of us.
Yeah,
No, I was joking.
We could hit the trifecta all three of us from here, right?
But I was asked to speak on the relationship between the construction entity and the locating entities.
Yeah,
And we talk about operating expenses as being a miss as far as not allocating for that.
it is.
And I spoke to, and look, construction and locating, we typically have an adversarial relationship, but we need to end that immediately. As much as we have a labor problem, a lot of our labor problem is because there's not enough locating labor and resources to stay in front of us to make sure that we keep our production up. I think it was a big miss that some of the BEAD money was not allowed to be applied for by locating services, buying new equipment, new GPRS equipment, training programs for producing more laborers to help accurately locate utilities on the ground. It's a big problem. It's expensive, and it really slows down a project.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to somebody last week, and they have 5,000 locates out there that they can't get anybody to come and locate it.
Exactly.
So that's the difference, right? And
Meanwhile, you've got crews that are literally sitting, waiting for those locations.
Yeah. And then you got old water lines to new water lines, and do you locate it right?
We got water that's going through clay tile.
Right.
That you cannot locate.
Right.
So what's going to happen? Well, we're going to hit it, and then we're going to know that it's there.
Right.
So hopefully we've got a GPS solution that will, or a geo sourcing solution that'll allow us to map that. And
Maybe the last area we can talk about before we give closing thoughts from each of you is what about the use of broadband for again, education, healthcare, work at home, the benefits, right? Again, the better lives part of Better Broadband, Better Lives. What are some of the things you've heard here at the conference, or just that you maybe didn't hear or want to hear at future conferences about how the broadband programs and the deployments really can achieve their intended goal of elevating people?
I tell you what, it's for me, my biggest thing is telehealth.
Yeah.
When I travel across the country, and I'm traveling across rural America a lot, I see that more and more there's no healthcare in small communities. If you've got less than 1,500 homes, there's probably no healthcare there. I'll tell a quick story. Hopefully it's quick. It's personal. So my sister, no longer with us, but she lived in very rural Kansas, and she had high-speed broadband, and she had a wireless defibrillator. She called me up one day and said, I got a call in the middle of the night from the hospital. And they asked me if I was okay. I said, why would they do that? She said, my heart stopped beating. And they restarted my heart through my Wi-Fi. Wow. That's what this does. That's what we do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that's the change that this can make in our world.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
he's right. It's unequivocal, the benefits, just in terms of like being able to participate in the digital economy, access to remote jobs, whatever, coding jobs, like good jobs. There's a study that we cite a lot in our work that for low income families, so only low income, access to broadband at home increases their income by $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
Which that's a lot. That's food, that's groceries. Like if you got kids, that goes a long way. So yeah, the data's there, to back up the benefits. We just got to roll it out.
Yeah.
We do a lot.
I think it's critical, right? Think about this. When we go and we talk to customers that want to deploy backbone fiber, maybe go to the resident, the school, whatever, economic development, critical. We want to, we're talking about rural areas. We want economic development to go back there. You want the same thing that you have in Metro Denver, Metro Atlanta, Metro Indianapolis, those kind of places, right? You want to have that same in the rural areas. Well, who's the first people going to sign up when you build that? Essential services, police, fire, hospitals.
100%.
Yeah. And then again, to your point, telemedicine. It's critical because think about this. The old days, you go out the x-rays, you carried them up there, now you can transfer that data packets to another facility where you're going to have your surgery done, those kind of things. So, and then obviously, again, e-learning, that's very critical.
I want to make sure that we give our audience questions here. We got a quick last question from Dan Smith. He says that Utopia Fiber is $30 a month if no CapEx is not $30, well above OpEx. So, and then Sean replies, that's a great deal, not found in most places. I hope that is enough to maintain. We got a lot of discussions coming here. Is there a reference for a speaker's statement that broadband access increases low-income households by 2,000 a year?
Gosh, it's on our website. Send
it to me. We'll put it on the page for this event.
There is a reference. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'll send it to you and then we'll send it to you.
Well, thank you for your questions. We will give each of them a final thoughts, just maybe something you heard that we haven't talked about or something you'd like to. But I want to just, again, thank everyone. I also want to thank all of the sponsors of Broadband Breakfast. I'm going to miss someone if I say them here, but just, visit Broadband Breakfast, see our advertisements by our sponsors. And also, next week, you won't want to miss a discussion we're having about net neutrality, Chevron deference, and the stay that the Sixth Circuit Court imposed on the FCC's rules, basically stopping them. So this is very big news, and we're going to drill into that and some of the legal aspects. And then the week after, 2 weeks from today, I'll be in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention. We'll be covering it there. And we're going to do a special Broadband Breakfast Live Online from Chicago, talking about the green energy program and the Democrats. We did one from the Republican National Convention on crypto as a kind of an issue that seems to be the tech adjacent issue that Republican advocates were gravitating towards. And we'll see whether green energy and advanced energy is one that the Democrats adapt to. So before we close out, let's just go from Alan to Jenny to Chris.
Well, first of all, Drew, thank you for putting this together and for having a forum like this. It's really wonderful. The last thing I'll say is this is what I tell my team, when I adjust the team at Corridor Network Construction, and I have the opportunity, one of the things I like to instill all the time is our gratitude for being part of this industry. I literally, every day I wake up, I am so grateful to be part of this industry and around so many great people, so smart, and we're doing a huge service to our time here on Earth and our culture and our society by bringing this access for medicine, for education, for welfare of all. So,
Well, thanks for being here and introducing us to Corridor Network, and we'll look forward to seeing you on future events at Broadband Breakfast. Jenny.
Yeah, echoing the thanks. This was really fun. This was a great way to spend a Wednesday, like make a couple new friends with fellow Hoosiers. It's always good. Yeah, I'm glad I ran into and caught up Monday night. That was really fun. I would say the thing I would kind of close out with just to call attention to. So there's something called non-deployment funds in BEAD.
Okay.
Basically, it's leftover BEAD funds. Not all states have the luxury of non-deployment funds. Some states aren't gonna, but for the states that do, we are seeing like MDU programs are coming up. New Jersey's a really good example. They're putting $20 million toward this. So they're finding like, this is a really good way to connect a lot of people for just a little bit of money, and like every penny counts, right? And when they say internet for all, that means internet for all, right? Evan Feynman just said that this morning. He was even talking about like to the unit connectivity and how that is absolutely required from NTIA. So yeah, I would just kind of draw attention to that.
No,
Some
thanks.
states with a little extra money are kind of cobbling together some pretty cool MDU programs.
Thanks for highlighting that. I guess just on that point, the Arkansas Broadband Office had a very interesting day-long event down in Hot Springs a month ago. We were there, and the whole half day. The first day was on the deployment aspect, but the last half day was on non-deployment and non-deployment funds, which they expect to have. And it was really quite structured and important to be able to think that through for those states.
Totally.
Chris, you're going to get our last word here.
Oh, thank you. Well, Drew, as always, thank you. It was great to be here with you again and live, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, here you get a true education, right? And it's whether you have 0 years of experience or 35 years of experience, it's great to have this kind of network, bounce ideas off people, learn different aspects, right? I mean, bellhead, fiberhead, those kind of people, what we call ourselves, right? And then just to be able to share these kind of experiences and the things I learned under the offices from the state broadband offices, right? How they map things, how they discover things. Didn't realize there was so much MDU out there, right? Because that's a struggle for us to be able to wire that, right? Or be able to get service to those. So it was good to meet Jenny, and obviously, thank you again, Drew.
Well, on behalf of each of you, thank you for being here, as well as this recording is available on the page for this event. And on behalf of Alan, Jenny, and Chris, I'm Drew Clark. We'll see you next Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.